Hello, I'm Brenda Vassar-Taylor here with Arkansas Issues. Today we will have a conversation with David McIntosh, the president of Club for Growth Foundation. David, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Brenda, and it's great to be with you. I particularly appreciate all that you do to educate voters and citizens in Arkansas and about the economic issues and about everything that's going on. So I'm president of a group called Club for Growth. We are the largest advocacy group in America for free markets, lower taxes, less spending, less regulation. And we focus the C4 on advocating for those things in Washington. But we also have a foundation, what the tax code classifies as a 501c3, that doesn't engage in politics or advocacy, but educates citizens about what goes on in the political process. And that C3, the Club for Growth Foundation, has started doing scorecards in various states. Arkansas is one of the initial ones. And what we do there is we rate state legislatures. We've been doing that, by the way, in Washington for a decade. We rate
I wanted you to tell us,
congressmen.
for those who don't know, give us a little bit of information about what you've done nationally, and then how you've scored and how effective that's been.
It's been very good. We rate both House and Senate on how they vote on the economic issues. And from that, we identify champions. People like Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Chip Roy in the House. And we score how every one of us voted. We also identify Republicans who say they're voting conservative, but when the rubber hits the road, they actually end up voting for a lot of these big government bills that are compromises with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And
now, what's your relationship with those legislators or congressmen or senators?
I don't think they care too much for us. Although interestingly, very interestingly, on some of our issues where big corporations come in and say, give us a handout, we say no, the free market should let everybody compete. Taxpayers shouldn't be subsidizing one business over another. And interestingly, some of the most furthest left Democrats, like Bernie Sanders, end up agreeing with us on that because they don't like handouts to corporate America either. It's one of those kind of circle effects in politics that doesn't happen that often, but it's surprising on some of the issues that we care about. And so we've been rating them. We also have a political arm in Washington that endorses candidates, and we use that scorecard that we produce for educational purposes. We look at those results and say, is this somebody that we would want to endorse and help get elected because they've stood by their word, they've done what they said they would do as conservatives, or is this somebody who as a Republican and says they're conservative, but when it comes time to voting, they don't follow up on the issues. They vote with the liberals and expand government.
Well, David, you've mentioned just a few of the people that your organization has supported through the years. I would like our viewers to hear maybe a little bit more of your list. Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, Tom Cotton, Tom Coburn. These are the champions of conservative, smaller government, free enterprise that we've seen leading our country in that charge. But now, just before we get a little bit further into it, for those who may not be as conscious of the benefit of smaller government, free enterprise, just give us a little elevator speech about why it matters. Why do we want smaller government, free enterprise, economic prosperity, economic freedom? It seems natural to you and me, but maybe not to everyone.
Right. No, that's a really good question. Somebody who's just living their life, they're not engaged in politics or policy. I would say to that person, what we stand for is, first of all, creating more opportunities for individuals to pursue their dreams, if they work hard, make money, save it, spend it for their family, and expand the whole economic pie so that everybody can participate in it. I would also say that that economic freedom is what allows Americans to enjoy a lot of other freedoms. They can be free to make choices about where their kids go to school if they have the resources for that. They can be free to decide, do I want to give to my church? And how much can I give to my church and to follow my faith when they have the economic resources to do that? And so I would say to them, we're fighting for what's made America great for 200 years. That we have an economic philosophy that says we're going to compete. You know, that stirs the competitive juices us in America. We see it in the sports area, we see it in a lot of other areas, but we need to make sure we keep it in the business area. And then the other thing that I try to explain to folks is, look, the other side, even if they're well-meaning, they want government to come in and fix things and rearrange them. And even if the intention is good, they want to succeed in doing something good for people, the whole system can't help but make that political. And so you're going to get people coming in for their own private interests and then use the power of government to give them advantage. You know, a lot of big corporations have figured this out. If they lobby and have PACs and spend money for politicians, then they can get an advantage over their competitors. So as a general matter, I share with them, you want government not to be engaged in the economy, because unless you've got a lot of money and can go to Washington and lobby, you're going to be left out. And what we try to do is protect those people who can't afford to hire an expensive lobbyist by talking about freedom and free markets and competition.
Your organization is amazing to us because, you know, I'm a lawyer. I like to disagree with people. I'm paid to do that. But as a human, I love it when someone agrees with me, right? And your organization agrees with the Conduit organization. I mean, we are there to help the person who has no voice at government, you know, at the government table. And you don't see a lot of people interested in paying for freedom and for no benefits from government. But I think the more we educate the public on what's really happening, the more successful and more support our organizations, ones like yours, would get from the common voter. So tell us just one more thing about your scorecard, your Congressional Scorecard. How long did you say you've been doing that?
Let's see, I think we started that roughly 14 or 15 years ago, and have been keeping track of votes for all of that time. We also do a lifetime rating because one of the things we noticed is that as a politician comes up to re-election, they start voting a little more conservatively so that the voters won't think that they've been given away the store. And so we look at how did they do the whole time they were there, over their whole career, and measure that. That gives you a real kind of sense of, are they really with us in fighting for freedom, or are they just a politician who talks about it but doesn't do it?
I think that's very, shows your level of experience in this. That's great. Now, tell me why state scorecard? You're focused on the national political scene, but now it appears that you're interested in looking at the states. Tell us why.
And let me clarify too that part isn't our political arm, that's our educational arm. And what we realized was there are different scorecards. I think you guys have a scorecard in Arkansas as well. And
we do.
When we looked at our results, it kind of reflects the same thing that you've been finding. But we realized in some states, they don't have that. And we also wanted to be able to let voters identify at the state level who are the really good men and women fighting for freedom. And one of the reasons we did that was we noticed that a lot of the mischief, the increase of government, this kind of pay to play and favoritism for certain businesses over other businesses starts out at that state level in the legislature there. And so when somebody's had they've grown up there, they've had their experience, and they run for Congress, they bring those bad ideas and bad habits with them. So we realized, let's educate folks at the state level what's going on there, and really shine a light on it. And
Well,
we
I
hope
really
then
appreciate
what
that.
happens is other groups will take that information and use it to advocate, because at the
Absolutely.
state level.
Well, we like it because you're, looking at the same issues that Conduit examines, and then a lot of the same votes, but your scorecard is different, and I'd like to get into that. But just to give everybody the view of what's happened in Arkansas, in 2014, we gained a 75% majority in both houses. It was just, remarkable. We, as in the Republican Party, which, claims their platform is for a smaller, limited government free enterprise. So I'm interested in hearing from you what you guys have, how you've graded our Senate and our House, State House, State Senate. I mean, I can assign a letter grade to it from reviewing your scorecard, but I want to hear from you.
Thank you. And let me describe some of the things we found in that first score, and that was for the 2019 legislative session. And by the way, your viewers can find that on our website, clubforgrowthfoundation.org. We publish all the results. We list every legislator and how they did. We talk about the votes that we're basing it on. So a couple good points. The legislator passed a strong tax cut bill at the beginning of that session, and the top rate goes on income taxes goes from 6.6, I think, down to 5.9% over 2 years. And that was signed into law. But what we found was later the Republicans quietly passed 7 tax hikes. And that ended up really bringing a lot of their scores down, because we weren't fooled by just looking at that first bill. We looked at everything they did and realized, actually, when you count up all the tax increases, they're taxing people in Arkansas more than before they started. And we hope that voters and citizens will know that. Another good thing we found was that they expanded parental choice in education. We're a big advocate for that. And then the C3 puts out information on those issues. Unfortunately, I think the bill there, that was in the Senate, and the bill, I think, died in the Arkansas House. So if voters care about that, they're going to have to start talking to their House members.
Absolutely.
And they have also passed some transparency measures now, and I think that's really good, where local government has to reveal what they're doing in their meetings so that citizens can know and pay attention to that. The Senate, the highest score in the Senate was only 69%, Brenda, and that was Senator Trent Gardner. I hope as they keep going in their majority, they'll look at these things and realize that's not really a great score. In our federal scorecard, we like to see 90% and above. Those are the real champions. 80% and above are kind of B plus. They're pretty good. But there's 69, that's getting in the D territory. And then in the House, the highest score was 95% by Austin McCullum. Yay, Austin. I mean, that's
Exactly.
an A+ champion for freedom. And our C4 gives out an award, Defender of Economic Freedom, and we gave that to Austin to let people know. Our advocacy group thinks that he did a great job. So this is the first scorecard. The C4 advocacy group has published a paper that we give to all around the country, to every legislature. How do you score well on the Club for Growth scorecard? And it points out you don't vote for tax increases. You don't vote for big spending bills that increase the size of government. You don't vote for, they call it crony capitalism or favoritism bills for one industry or one company over another. And I'm hoping as this information gets out and voters start to digest it more, groups like yours take it, run with it, publish it for people in Arkansas, I'm hoping we'll see a better response by our elected leaders.
Well, I think that one thing that really jumped out at us for the difference in our two scorecards is that you warned the legislators, we are not going to count a present vote as, you know, just if you're not voting yes or no, you're automatically not voting with our policies or we want to see you vote in your position. So tell us just a couple of minutes on that. I do want the legislators to learn that.
So honestly, Brenda, we were kind of surprised when we went in and we found, you know, as many as 30% of the time, sometimes these legislators don't show up for the hard votes. And they don't show up so they can hide. The leadership says, we don't need your vote, we'll get it passed without you, so take a pass. By the way, that's totally different than the ethic in Congress. When I was there, or Tom Cotton today, or French Hill, they try to vote on every issue. They sometimes miss it because of something in the schedule or whatever, but most members of Congress have 95% and higher in the time they show up. In fact, if you get down into the low 90s, people start dinging you for missing votes, right? It's a criticism. So it's dramatically different there. They show up and do the job, but this ethic has crept into the Arkansas legislator that, hey, it's okay to not do your job. It's okay if you don't vote, if it's a hard vote, we'll cover for you. Well, my honest opinion on that is that's pathetic. That's not doing what people elected you to do. I can disagree with you, you can make your own choices, but you really owe it to the voters to show up and vote so they know what you're doing when you represent them. And we're hoping by highlighting that feature, that'll make a difference. We also made an executive decision, if you will, that if we know they're hiding behind a no-show, we're going to start to score against that, and we're going to call them for what they are. That's really letting the thing pass and supporting it by just not showing up. And so if you're a legislator and you do that, your voters deserve to know that's what you did.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that will help to benefit the people of the state, those who care about how their legislator votes, and we all live out the consequences. One more thing to wrap up on the scorecard. How would you say Arkansas compares to some of the other states that you've scored on the tax policy?
Yeah, and we're just starting. Bad news, I think they'd be in the bottom half of Republican-controlled legislators, especially on tax policy, where they had all those tax increases. You know, you've got differences around the country. Florida, when they've got a good governor leading the way, the legislature actually does a pretty good job. Texas is mixed, but on the whole, pretty good. And Arkansas had one of the lower scores because of all those tax increases. And again, that's going to be up to the voters when they get the information and start giving feedback to their representatives. And we hope to see a change in that over time. But our mission in the scorecard is just to educate and give them the information, empower them with knowledge, and let the truth set them free.
Well, Arkansas is very honored that you would choose us to educate our voters, and we appreciate that. Now, before you go, let us find out a little bit more about what Club for Growth is up to on the national level. I've seen that you're trying to give some good advice to our Senate, and as we're looking at the COVID crisis, maybe you're not necessarily agreeing with the leadership in the Senate, and you might have some suggestions as I would support the payroll tax.
Yeah.
You know, removing that temporarily. I mean, our president was for that. And also school choice. Would you address those two issues and how you see maybe they should be
glad to.
Going forward?
So, and this is our advocacy group in Washington, the Club for Growth. We looked at this new bill that Leader McConnell was putting together that was supposed to be Republican priorities in dealing with COVID. And we said, you know, at the beginning, first, do no harm. Some of the things they passed in the last couple bills actually hurt efforts to restore the economy and create jobs. But second, do things that focus on incentivizing people to go back to work, reopening the economy, letting our country get back as we deal with the health crisis. And so one of the best proposals for that was a payroll tax reduction. That's the tax that everybody pays for Social Security. The employer pays half of it and the worker pays half of it. It's the tax that literally every working American pays into, right? And we're proposing to have a tax relief that would end that temporarily now that we're trying to get the economy to recover. Essentially what it does is it lets people have more take-home pay. They get less
And
money taken out of their
how
check.
fair would that be? Everyone that works pays in, the employer would benefit. I mean, that just seems so reasonable.
Yes. And honestly, it goes opposite of what they've been doing, which is paying people not to work, right? In fact, there's this bonus in the unemployment insurance, and they're continuing it. Republicans are keeping it, that pay
That's
people not
insane
to
from
work.
our perspective, yes.
My view of that is, look at it as a fairness issue. Is it fair to tax somebody who is working, trying to provide for their family, and say, we're going to take your tax dollars and give it to somebody who's not working? Now, we want to help people who lose their job. That's why we have
Absolutely.
unemployment insurance, but we don't want to pay them a bonus so they don't go back to work. But Republicans don't get it in the Senate. So we've been yelling pretty loud about that one. The other thing that we did, you mentioned the schools and education, and we've called it a Parental Choice grant. You know, there's a big problem of a lot of schools not reopening, parents frustrated that they don't know how to make sure their kids get a good education. You've got a systemic problem in the city schools where they're dangerous and people live there feel trapped in these schools. And so we suggested it was about $70 billion that they were going to give to schools all over the country. Don't send that to the bureaucracy. Take that money and create a new grant to parents. Send it right to the parents. If they want to keep their kids in the public school, they can spend it on money that helps the public school. If they need a tutor because their child's not good at distance learning, they can do that. Or if they want a different option, they want to go to a private school, a religious school, or homeschool, they'll have resources. And we suggested that money could pay up to $10,000 per child. You know, instead of sending that and let it be spent on bureaucracies, frankly, in schools that aren't opening, send it to the parents. We did some polling of that, and it's enormously popular. People, you know, by a margin of 28%, more people prefer that than don't like it. Now, of course, the unions and the special interests are going to fight you on that. But, and we talked to President Trump about it. He likes the idea. You may have seen in some of his rally, he's starting to talk about it. We want to help parents when the schools are shut down. So that's a big issue that we've invested a lot of effort to put forward. I'm going to put on my political hat for our PAC and say, politically for Republicans, it is a positive because Biden has said he's going to shut down charter schools, even schools that have been established over time. He'll get rid of all the scholarship programs with government money, and he'll end the charter schools. And so he's taking away choices from parents right as we need to expand those choices. So that'd be a real vivid contrast for the future of the country, that this election could let people choose what direction they want to go in.
Well, I hope that all of our listeners will contact Tom Cotton, John Bozeman, at least our senators, even the House members for our state, and tell them that we want parental choice. We want to support what you guys are moving forward. That would be, we have a great interest in school choice in our Conduit organizations. And, you know, you mentioned Arkansas's movement in that direction. So yeah. I really encourage our listeners to make contact immediately. And I'm with you. I believe that to stand up for these type principles will win some elections in November, as opposed to trying to look more like the Democrat.
Well, and unfortunately, and I've even said this, I'm worried that, you know, Mitch McConnell leading the Senate to be kind of a pale shade of Nancy Pelosi. It was the Wall Street Journal that labeled it that. Is going to lead to a defeat in some key races around the country. And Katie bar the door if the Democrats get the U.S. Senate majority and they win the White House. So I think he's playing with fire, and he thinks he's doing the right thing to help people by just spending more money. But I think he's been in Washington too long and doesn't realize that people around the country want a choice. They don't want Republicans to be like weak Democrats, right? If
Right.
that's their choice, they're going to go for the real thing and elect the
Absolutely.
Democrats. But if they have a real choice, which party is going to stand up for freedom and for people and for individuals and for a good economy, versus a party that stands up for government and paying for bureaucracies and frankly an economic program that would create massive unemployment and hurt people. We got to give them that vivid choice and know what, so they know what the future is. Otherwise they'll be, you know, listening to the nightly news that makes it all fuzzy and wonder, what do we do?
Well, I hope that Club for Growth will have great success in that arena. We would love to help ever how we can. Now, I had asked you when we started, would you please end our conversation on a positive note? Every time I turn on the news or think about what's happening currently in our country, in my lifetime, I can remember the 60s, but you know, I don't remember them that they were this bad and this close to a collapse of our even our judicial system. I mean, we look like we're on the brink. So David, give us some encouragement for the future prospects, win or lose in November.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. And first, let me agree with you. I think we are on the brink, and so much is at stake in this election. I would urge everybody, please, please get out and vote in this election, because more than ever, it will determine the future for you and your children and future generations, and whether the American experiment in freedom will survive. I mean, it's that basic. And I am encouraged when I talk to young people. They know what's at stake. They know what's good about our country. They want to see things made better, and so they're supportive of that. But they know that we are blessed and live in a great country. And even if their peers or their professors tell them, socialism's the way to go, in their gut they realize that they have something special. And they're willing to, the other thing is the people are now willing to step up to the plate and get engaged. I want to tell you about a story about someone I met from Arkansas, actually. He was famous as a football player, Jake Bouquet. Was a defensive tackle, I think, with Arkansas, and went into the Army as a Ranger, could have a career. He was in law school for a while, wouldn't have to worry about what happens in government because he's had it successfully as an NFL player. He could just create a sanctuary for himself and his family and be fine. But Jake was telling me, and he's got it on his heart, that he needs to get engaged and be part of the political process, because that's what's at stake for the future of our country. And I love to encourage young people like that. Yes, get involved, take a risk. Politics is messy. It can be nasty and brutal in some ways, but that is what determines the future path for our country. So I am encouraged when I meet people like that, and I meet them all over the country who are willing to sacrifice to save what's made America great for 200 years, to fight for freedom and for individuals, and to fight for our economy and prosperity. That buoys me, because I know even if we may lose, we might have a setback, that core in what America is all about isn't going to go away. And a setback will just cause people to fight harder for freedom. And so I am encouraged. It doesn't mean we can leave the battlefield. We've got to fight hard over the next few months. But whatever happens, I think we will continue to be blessed. Ronald Reagan, my hero, my first person I really worked for in government, talked about our country being a shining city on the hill. And by that, he meant that God had blessed us with the light of freedom, and will continue to look over us and bless us. But we have to do our part and fight the battle for what we know is right and true.
Well, David, I appreciate Club for Growth. I appreciate your work. You have many years of faithfulness to this country that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. I hope our viewers will learn from what we've presented, and that they will encourage each other and follow your recommendation, vote in November, and hold our legislators state and national accountable. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.